What's up, everybody? We've got another show for you today. And today, Sean and I are going to be talking about why pursuing truth is one of the most important things that we can do, even more important than being nice. Thank you again for downloading today's episode. We got a good one today, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, truth is the most important thing that we could pursue.
Right. I mean, it should be good.
Yeah, it should be good.
We're talking about one of the universals here, so I would hope so.
And there is truth. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but there absolutely is truth. We're going to dive into that a little bit more. But thank you again for downloading. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. You can check us out on justaparishioner.com, facebook.com/justaparishioner, Instagram @justaparishioner. Did I name it all? Did I name things twice?
No. Yeah, we're not on TikTok yet.
No,
so.
We're not going to be on TikTok.
We'll never be on TikTok.
We might be on TikTok.
We probably made this joke before.
And then it's going to get banned.
Yeah.
But it's fine. So why is truth important, Sean?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question, right? That's a big one. Well, I just mentioned the universals, right? And like philosophically, there's really three kind of like, I think the term is universals, and that's truth, beauty, and goodness. Mm-hmm. And it's really, from a classical Hellenistic philosophy, Greek philosophy, those are like the three kind of ideals. And then taking that into a Christian lens, it's like God is truth, beauty, and goodness. God kind of is this, we've talked about it before, this underlying structure of being of everything that is. And, everything that is of God has some sense of truth, beauty, and goodness to it. So truth being kind of like the lead starter in that, trio. Usually it's obviously something that's really important here,
right? And
something that exists. And
it's like defining what truth is, right? I heard this the other day. What is truth? And it's like kind of a snarky definition, but what is truth? It is. Like that's it. Like that's what it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Which would line up really well with with the Christian philosophy. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, and what I also want to talk about today is how, contradictions, non-contradictions, what truth actually is, what we believe, what we believe to be objective truths, the difference between objective truth and subjective truth, and all that.
Even just saying objective truth will get you canceled these days.
No, I know.
That's people.
That's what I mean. But again, this is obviously, I didn't come up with this, but you've heard this before. Saying the phrase "there is no objective truth" in itself, is an objective truth.
Right. I mean, anytime you make an assertion, you're stating that something is the way it is,
right.
know? So exactly. You can't do that. I mean, it's the most common, I think, logical, what's the word? What's the word for something that
truth?
Yeah.
I actually don't know what you're going with.
Fallacy.
Okay.
Fallacy.
Yeah. But okay, so let's go back to definition of truth, right? And again, the snarky definition that I talked about before is truth is what is, right? And then the difference between subjective truth, objective truth, right? Subjective truth being opinions. I think it's basically a synonym there. A subjective truth is an opinion, right?
Yeah.
I can say vanilla ice cream is better than chocolate ice cream.
Right.
It is a truth, and I hate using this phrase, but it's my truth, right? That's what's true to me.
Right.
But that's a subjective truth. Why? Because you're a mint guy. You're a mint chocolate chip guy.
No, I love vanilla.
Okay.
I do like vanilla.
I'm not trying to peg you there.
I like cake batter though. So, I mean, maybe you could say cake batter is better than chocolate. I would agree with you if you said that.
Was that a diss? Was that a slight to you that you look like a mint chocolate chip guy?
Well, listen. We'll take it off air.
Okay, fine. You look basic. That's what I'm saying.
Well, so, I mean, even that, so the whole concept of like my sensual experience, like the way I experience the world through my senses, that's how I determine what I feel to be true, right? And that's a great example of it, because you're literally like tasting something.
Right.
And it's funny because like in the human experience, we can all agree on what vanilla tastes like, right? We might not all agree that vanilla is the best flavor, but we can all agree what it tastes like. And then, so that kind of leads into that objective truth side of things. Like you're talking about the subjective truth of like one ice cream flavor versus another being a personal favorite. But the objective truth is that like we know what an ice cream flavor tastes like based on our collective human experience here.
Right.
that's something that's like lost on a lot of people though.
Right, exactly. I mean, like, so an example of like an objective truth going, I guess, scientific, water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit
Yeah.
on Earth, right?
Yeah. Right. That's like a thermodynamic law.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly. And the fact that, oddly enough, that can be argued from a subjective truth perspective. Well, that might be your truth versus my, like, then no, it's like we've gone so far away from reality at this point where that can get argued. 2 + 2 = 4 can get argued now. That's wild to me. So we're missing something. And again, this is at the very, you and I are right now are just talking about the basic level of what a word is, the word truth, right? So again, objective truth, things that are beyond us. And I heard a good description of objective truth, and this will play into what we're about to talk about. Objective truth is a fact that is whether one knows it, likes it, or believes it, right?
Yeah.
So again, the example I heard is the speed limit outside is 30 miles per hour. Dude gets pulled over and it's like, well, I didn't know. Well, that's tough, dude, because now you're going to have to pay that ticket because regardless whether you knew it or not, the objective truth is that's what the speed limit was outside. Right. It was your responsibility to know it.
It's happened to me before. That's how I got my first speeding ticket. That's great.
You didn't know it. You didn't like it.
Yeah.
Now you believe it.
Right. I thought it was a 55. Ended up being a 40 zone.
And you're $140 less now.
Yeah.
And that was the truth. But again, like let's tie this into the faith, right? Catholic podcast, we're talking about faith. There are objective truths within our faith. And what bothers me are these lukewarm conversations or lukewarm leads into conversations, right? Because nobody wants to admit to an objective truth. Okay. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about differences in religions, which is fine, right? Which is fine. You've got your religion. I have my religion. But what is not okay is saying, well, you know what? You believe what you believe. I believe what I believe. And we could be both right. And we could both coexist. Yeah. And we could both be right. No. Yeah. You cannot both be right. Okay. And just to take it to the simplest explanation of our faith, Jesus Christ is the Messiah. I'm going to say that objective truth, right? Jesus Christ is the Messiah. One might not believe it. A lot of people might not like it. A lot of people don't know it, but we believe that to be an objective truth, that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. For somebody to say that they have a different belief system or a different religion, I can't sit here and tell you, well, we can both be right. No, we objectively cannot be both right because I believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah. You do not believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah, assuming that that's what the religion I'm talking about, like not Protestant or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, people will be happy to go along with the idea that like Jesus is a great teacher or is a great moral person. I saw some stuff floating around on social media saying like, I was raised with the teaching that Jesus taught to love your neighbor and to love unconditionally. And I really appreciate that. And like, happy Easter to everybody who celebrates. It's like, well, that's not what Easter's about. Right. It's about the resurrection. And
that's all nice intentions. Of course. And you got to respect that they're trying to take something away from it. But here's the thing. I could take away something nice from other religions too. We could all do that.
Yeah. I mean, every religion really at its base shares a basic set of moral values for the most part. Right. Like you can go back to Roman mythology or, Shintoism in Japan or Greek mythology, like whatever across the board, they can come up with the same stuff to some degree. But then obviously there's going to be the theological differences there. So.
Right. Exactly. So I mean that's what I mean by, again, of course we should be kind as much as we can. Of course we can be nice. And there's even a place of being kind when it comes to evangelization, I think. Because if we're going to stand around and scream at everybody saying that they're going to hell if they don't believe what we believe, and they're going to hell if you don't participate in the sacraments. If we stand there and yell that, literally or figuratively, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be the best approach in regards to breaking through to somebody's heart.
Right.
So again, having a kind way of going about it, but to a certain extent, right? Because what I think the problem is a lot of people are worried about being kind and nice and then sacrificing truth for the other virtue.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what you just said about like the evangelization piece, because I think we're kind of like going along a lot of points here.
I'm jumping around here.
Yeah. I want to talk about one thing, and you're just moving right on to the next thing.
Why don't you focus, man? Let's speak up then. Come on,
I'm trying.
now.
All right, so I think
it's my 5th beer. I'm ready. No, it's not.
I think that the overarching theme of like Christianity in a lot of ways is that there's always like a middle path to be taken between two extremes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like you mentioned, you don't want to be like one of these hate preachers on the street telling people like you're going to hell because you're sinning. Like, yeah, that very well may be true in some unique circumstances, although as you know, just lay human beings, we may not be able to make that judgment one way or another.
Right.
Sometimes we know that something is evil objectively. Of course we do, but
right.
You know, we'll leave the hell to God. Right. That being said, we also don't want to be the complete coddling person that never speaks your truth. Right. Again, I'm using the phraseology is all too common today that I really don't like, but speaking the truth. So yeah, I think that's like one of the questions that we all wrestle with when it comes to how do I speak out about what is actually true in a world where, you know, truth itself is really just a kind of something that's not even thought of, you know, right. It's kind of just like whatever can be, it just should be if it's in your mind, you know? So I think of it in the terms of in Matthew's gospel, I think it's chapter 10, and Jesus saying, don't think that I've come here to bring peace on earth. I've come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, right? Like Jesus didn't come to the earth for that like peace and love and hippie mentality and everybody loves everybody and anybody can do anything, right? He came to bring a new law and a new covenant that was going to cause division among people. He said, I'm going to set man against his father and daughter against his mother, and one's enemies will be those of his household, right? Because even immediately after Jesus' resurrection, we saw that happening. Like I was reading through Acts of the Apostles this morning and like reading about how Paul was this amazing Jewish student of Gamaliel, the rabbi. Well, he wasn't a rabbi. I guess he was a Pharisee or Sadducee. I don't know. It was one of the sects of Judaism at the time.
Yeah, you got me.
Yeah, but he was so passionate about his Jewish faith and the Christian teaching that was coming out of, you know, that obviously like miraculous time that he just started leading massive persecutions against them. So that's an extreme example, but shows that like when you stand up for truth, when you stand up for Christ, there's probably going to be some conflict that comes your way. Like Jesus told us that. Now, that being said, what does that mean as far as our responsibility goes to the people around us? I think that's really the struggle that most people would have. Like in my relationships with the people around me.
It's a struggle I have.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm speaking from my own experience,
yeah.
You know, like with none of these really have applied to me, but like if you're somebody who has a sibling that is doing something that is just flying in the face of church teaching, right? Like it's tough to address that,
right?
You know, for a couple of reasons. Like number one, there's just like the courage that it takes to stand up and say something. But number two, there's the familiarity that's bred within your family that like if you do say something, you're probably just going to be brushed off with like no real regard given in a lot of cases. So, and this can be anything from like social issues to moral issues to you know, everything across the board.
Yeah. I mean, what you got me thinking of is Jesus getting rejected in Nazareth, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like a little too comfortable, right?
Right.
It's like, I know who you are.
A prophet will never be welcome in his hometown. Is that what it is?
Something like that. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, the people that you're closest to they're probably the hardest to at least evangelize. And it's probably, right? Probably the people that you're walking on eggshells around for the reasons that you just named. But objectively, the people that we love the most of the time, that we should be trying to evangelize the most. But it's like one of those things. It's like, do I need to be kind today to them? And like, one of the best ways to evangelize is to just live out your faith boldly, right?
Right.
Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you need to slap them in the face with some truth.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's timing, it's approach, it's everything. But
yeah, I mean, if you have, like, I was getting into an example, like if your sibling is somebody who wants to marry somebody of the same sex, right? Like as a Catholic, how do you stand up and say, like, I don't think you should do that, or if your best friend who was raised Catholic with you, whatever, is just, dating somebody and has no intentions of getting married, but they're living totally as if they are married and, are doing everything they can not to have kids. And like, I mean, those are just like a couple, I think, common examples. Say if you're in college and like all your friends are like binge drinking their faces off all the time and like you're a little uncomfortable with it and you're trying to figure out how to address that without like completely becoming a social outcast. Like,
right.
It's very difficult to stand up and do that. And that's where like that, I think kind of what you were just saying, like what's the path you take? Are you going to be the one who like puts your foot down and publicly is like, I am a Christian and a Catholic and I'm not going to do this or stand for this because X, Y, and Z of what the church teaches? Or is it better to be the person who just kind of like quietly but boldly lives out your faith in your own personal life and hopes that serves as an example to other people?
Right. I mean, in all those examples, right, at the end of the day, it's coming out and making sure that the person knows that they are loved and what you're condemning is the sin, right? Not the person.
Yeah.
But going back to the theme of what we're talking about right now, what's not acceptable is us, and again, I do this all the time. What's not acceptable is me saying, okay, these are my beliefs. They have their own beliefs and they can coexist with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's not acceptable. And I say that to myself. Because what I believe is true for all. Whether they know it, like it, or believe it, what I believe is true for all. That's our faith,
mm-hmm.
right? Like there are moral black and whites. Again, so there's some gray area, but there's a lot of black and whites.
Mm-hmm.
But what we believe to be black and white are black and white for all, meaning that if we commit it, it's a sin. If they commit it, it's a sin.
Mm-hmm.
Same sin. There are different levels of accountability, right? And we know this, different levels of accountability of what's known, what's not known. That could be on the verge of what is a mortal sin versus what is a venial sin.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, what's a sin for me is a sin for you, whether you know it, like it, or believe it. So this whole lukewarm aspect of this is my beliefs, but I'm not going to push what I believe onto them. It's like, no, what you believe is what the beliefs that you have. The majority of them are objective truths, and it applies for every single person on this earth, regardless.
Yeah. I think Fulton Sheen has a good line. Bishop Fulton Sheen, he had a line that said, if you don't behave as you believe, you will end up believing as you behave. And that's for like, physical actions that you take, but it's also like your mentality. Like if you just go through life floating mentally as if everything that anybody does is okay all the time, then that you're going to start to conform your own moral behavior around that too. That's just the human nature. If you're not like courageous and standing up for what you actually do declare to be true, especially when it does line up with the actual objective truth, then you're just going to float through life doing whatever you want to and justifying it by that same irrational logic that no, it's all good. Like whatever I want to do is fine. And whatever you want to do is fine. Yeah.
We talked about justifying our own sins and our own actions on the last episode, but you're right. It's time to speak up. But again, we're not saying get in people's faces, not yet, right? There might be a time and a place for that, but not in every scenario. What do you think the toughest scenarios are for you to speak objective truth, and how do you approach that?
I mean,
we talked about family. I think family is one of the toughest.
Family is a tough one. And in my experience, that's just been something where it's like you can say it and just hope it has some kind of resonating factor. It depends on everybody's relationship with their family is different. So
Right.
it's going to depend on that. I mean, some people, their brother or sister are like their absolute best friend. And like that person will take whatever they say as like absolute word and just like follow that, or
Right.
like really consider it heavily, at least, Others, it might not be that way. I think like friendships, depending on the level of friendship, certainly depending on just the mentality of the friend. And this is just something else I was thinking about as talking with my wife about this conversation and talking, just floating some thoughts around. It's almost like when it comes to friendships and truth, and we may have talked about friendships in the past on the podcast about like, do you maintain friendships for certain reasons? Like, do you maintain a friendship because there's longevity there of the friendship? Do you maintain it because there's just really deep familiarity? Is it based around similar interests or shared hobbies? Or is there like maybe a deeper like philosophical or value-based friendship there too? And I think when it comes to friendships, when it is kind of based on longevity of just knowing each other and being familiar with each other, whether that's like friends going back to childhood or high school or college or whatever it is, those friendships can be really good and really valid and really like fruitful in a lot of ways. But when it comes to those kinds of like conversations about what's true, what's morally correct, what's theologically correct, and like how we're supposed to be living our lives in seeking salvation, it ultimately might be something that the conversation isn't going to get very far.
Right.
What that has done, I think, for me in some ways, and certainly for other people I know in my life, it's caused a little bit of like a contraction of the circle that you keep.
Right.
If that makes sense. It's like tightening the circle, kind of just with people around you that do value the same things as you, so that there's a building up that goes on. It's kind of like this whole idea from Proverbs of iron sharpening iron. People who are pursuing the same ideals, pursuing the same heaven, might be able to get each other there, as opposed to trying to drag somebody along the way. There's a role for both of those in the Christian life, but I think that there's a wisdom that starts to come once you have those conversations and considerations for each individual person's life, to think about like, okay, like my goal here as a Christian, like all this truth, like potential judgment, all that stuff aside, like what am I here for on earth? I'm here to get to heaven, to join Christ in eternal worship of him. Well, join the saints in eternal worship of Christ, join Christ in heaven. How do I do that? I live my life as morally correct and follow the path of Jesus as possible, and repent of my sins when I do sin, and try to bring other people along with me by evangelizing.
Right.
And that evangelization can take a lot of different forms, but if you're not primarily focused on following Christ in your own personal life anyway, then, all of the truth seeking in external places with other people is going to be probably for nothing.
It's funny you say that, because I think as we get older, right, and again, and for any of our older listeners, they're probably nodding and they're going to agree with what I say, regardless of the pursuit of truth or not, right, or having pursuing friends with deeper relationships on purpose, right? Outside of that, I think the circles do get smaller naturally as you get older, regardless, right? However, I think it will shrink the circle much faster.
Yeah. Or, I mean, if the circle does shrink naturally, because like, say you have a really good friend that you don't stay in touch with, but you do have those values, like maybe part of your challenge is to like be more intentional about expanding that circle to that person, so that you still keep somebody in your life that kind of has that same mindset as you with regard to values.
So it's so funny. Like now I'm trying to think of, so we're not going to take this as only surround yourself with like-minded Catholics and that's it, right? That's obviously not what we're saying at all. And I'll piggyback that, right? What I just said, I'll piggyback myself and say, I think that there's a lot of value of having friendships, even if not sharing the same Catholic faith, but at least sharing the pursuit of truth itself, right? So that's where there's no room for this kind, nice coexist regardless kind of mentality
Mhm.
where it's like, no, surround yourself with people who are trying to pursue the truth, whether they have a different set of beliefs than you or not, because what that's going to create is super meaningful conversation
Mhm.
and deeper conversation, and it'll sharpen your knife, right? It'll make you a better Catholic because there are going to be questions posed to you that you might not have the answers to unless you're challenged from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And both of you can coexist as both trying to pursue truth, and that could happen over the course of many years, right? Again, knowing that but that can also be coming from a respectful place, and I think that's the misconception too, is like, oh, you guys are trying to push your faith on me and you're being disrespectful because by doing that, you're being disrespectful,
Mhm.
right? I'm sorry, but your opinions and the things that you say sometimes with a lack of faith is disrespectful to me.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying, but at the end of the day, that's how you choose to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can have friends that aren't like super religious Catholic people, of course. And you can have friends who aren't Catholic at all that you can just have good, meaningful conversation with. I think it's a delineation of like, are those just people who you accept are going to be in your life that aren't going to believe the same things as you? Or are you trying to like convert people in your life to Catholicism?
Is it like a really, really, really slow play?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like,
there comes a point where it needs to, where if we're at the gates and they're looking at our resume, right? Jesus is looking at our resume. He's
Yeah.
like, you've been friends with this guy for 40 years and you didn't try to nudge him towards me once.
But what about the friends that are like, hey, I hear what you're saying. I'm never going to believe that. Like, I don't think you need to break off the friendship per se.
No, I don't think so either.
But you know where they stand.
Right. But again, those who aren't even pursuing truth whatsoever, and they're just there for the hour or the minute or the day or whatever it is, right? Those naturally become these very surface relationships.
100%. Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, how are you? Check out this meme. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah,
Want to grab 3 beers? Want to grab 9 beers? Ha 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 ha. And then after that, it's all right, go home. And there's really no deep conversation outside of, I don't know, the Giants' second draft pick, right? Like,
right. Which is big news these days.
Big news, big news draft coming up. But you know what I mean? Like if we're at the point in our lives and some people have been there already. Some people who are listening might not be there yet. But right now, I think what we're talking about is the pursuit of truth is so unbelievably important at this point. And I need to do a better job. Personally, I need to do a better job of making sure I'm not having too many lukewarm conversations to try just to be nice. Tough to do in the workplace. Like I asked you before, what's like the toughest place? I think the workplace has a tendency to be tougher places to speak, outwardly.
Yeah.
The truth. I would never say, even if you're in the workplace, I would never say concede, right?
Yeah.
Like never concede to a non-truth, just to fit in. But again, tougher to speak the truth in workplaces. Another scenario was meeting people, not strangers. Strangers I'll speak truth to all day long. But meeting people like acquaintances through a friend. Right. It's like, all right, like I need to be aware of the social situation. You have another person that's vouching for you in that social situation. But again, no, I don't think any conversation or any interaction is off limits.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's never easy. I don't even somebody you're extremely comfortable with, it might not be easy to like call something out if you see it as something that's flays in the face of truth. And maybe you do that and it ends up being an embarrassing moment because you didn't understand things right, or you didn't like whatever. Like none of us is judge, jury, executioner when it comes to what's morally correct and morally wrong, because we just don't know exactly what's going on in everybody's life. There are obviously evils out there, right? And I think that some of the stuff that we just know is objectively evil. We've talked about abortion quite a bit on different episodes. We can talk about slavery and human trafficking and, racism. And frankly, like the crazy gender stuff going on these days where like kids are getting surgeries to have their bodies mutilated because they have what's essentially a mental illness at a very young age.
Right. This is where the topic of truth comes up lot.
And this is stuff where it's just like, living in the modern world, there are new challenges brought about all the time, whether it's a cultural movement or in your individual life. And it's just a question of like, as a church, and certainly, hopefully, maybe even as a country or as a community, like, will people stand up for this, or will there be like these individual social martyrdoms, so to speak, because of the people who do stand up for it? It's kind of crazy, but each of us does have that individual responsibility. And like at the end of the day, the line between good and evil does cross between every human heart. So like everyone's got to make that choice when these moments do come up, and not just about that huge social stuff, but even just like in our day-to-day lives. Like if you're pursuing truth and you're trying to identify truth and command truth from other people, like we do have to command it from ourselves and live it out that way.
Right. Again, easier said than done in different scenarios, right? You and I can speak truth when it's just the two of us in this room, cameras on, mics on, but we could talk about that all day, throw us into the real world in different scenarios, and it gets much more difficult. And I am very sensitive to that, especially like our listeners are probably thinking, yeah, of course you guys could talk about it right then and there. But I'm telling you right now, it's absolutely a struggle. But the whole reason for this conversation is I think in my life, I might be too kind sometimes when I should be pursuing and speaking truth in more, and not every scenario, but in a lot more scenarios.
Yeah. And, when you're thinking about it in terms of Christian doctrine and Christian philosophy, and really understanding like what it is that we're doing here. We're all trying to get to heaven, right? If you love that person, and we talk about love in the Christian sense from St. Thomas Aquinas, meaning love means willing the good of the other, like truly wanting what is best for that individual human soul. It's for them to be able to get to heaven too.
Totally.
And so when you're talking about truth with somebody, when you're talking about like, I'm coming at this from a place of love. Like I love you and I want you to know that's why I feel this way about something that I've recognized in your life or recognized in your actions or whatever it is. And they can take that or leave that, you know, but you leave that prerogative up to them. Sometimes people need a call out. Sometimes people like need somebody else to recognize the brokenness in their life in order for them to get past their own human fragility on that. And sometimes they're going to spit in your face and walk away. But like, Jesus talked about that too. You dust off your feet and go to the next town, Right.
And again, if you're going to be pursuing these conversations, right, or having these conversations, or not even having a conversation, but like scrolling through your feed or reading the news and getting absolutely livid, right? Yeah. What I need to do a better job of is, or having a conversation is approaching what I'm seeing and replacing my ability to judge, right? Replacing my judgmental self with love instead, which I don't do. Mm-hmm. I actually like rarely do, right?
Yeah, it's very easy to just stay pessimistic and angry.
Totally, right? But looking at either the individual or those who have caused harm to an individual, right? But if I'm looking at it from a different perspective and saying, instead of judging what I'm looking at on the screen right now or judging that person or these people, I got to look at it from a perspective of love and saying, listen, what they're doing is on a path that is far from righteous, right? Mm-hmm. And what can I do, or what kind of changes can we make to get these people to heaven, right? Like you were saying before, because it is all out of love. Mm-hmm. But again, that love gets replaced with me judging instead,
right?
A lot.
Yeah.
So. I mean, I think I would challenge myself and everybody listening to do that. Yeah. Try to put the anger aside a little bit, the frustration aside a little bit too, and just replace it with sympathy. Because if we do that, I think we can come at these conversations from a much more loving angle, which can also be more productive in certain circumstances.
Definitely. Yeah. And it is a tightrope to walk. I think a lot of
Absolutely.
being a Catholic and following Christ is just walking a tightrope. And it's like that image of the entrance to heaven is a narrow gate.
Right.
Maybe it's like narrow because people are trying to do the right thing, but ending up on the complete wrong side of the entrance.
Totally.
You know?
Totally. But again, that's the tightrope, right? That's a very, very fine line.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we end, I'm going to shoot this over because obviously I usually have these dials in front of me,
Right.
but for the last few episodes, we have had a lot of help from good friend, my man, Mike Koratz, who has a microphone in front of him. So Mike, how we doing?
How's it going, all you Just a Parishioner people?
There you go. So Mike has volunteered his time for the majority of these episodes to come help produce. He's behind the curtain helping set up and break down also. So Mikey, you're a college student here on Long Island, right?
Right.
But you're also the president of the Newman Club, big man on campus over there. So how's your experience been, being the president of the Newman Club? And we're going to talk more about this. We're going to have Mike on for another episode down the road. But how's your experience been being on that college campus?
It's been an interesting one for sure because, when I started out, I was, just a freshman last year. And then all the people that were on our executive board all graduated. So it was pretty much left up to me and some of the people that also had just got there. So it's been interesting, but we've managed to work through it and we're doing well. And, I think a lot of the things that you guys were talking about today absolutely apply to, even me as the president of the Newman Club, because how do I talk to, the people that are also in the Newman Club about some of these more sensitive topics where, yeah, I want to help them, but I also don't want to lose them from the club.
Totally.
Things like that.
That is very tough. And I was going to ask you that question within this conversation of like being on a secular campus, essentially, right? And being the president of a club that's probably not super popular on campus, but again, that doesn't matter, right? Small but strong, but just kind of being out there. But you brought up something that I didn't even think about, right? It's like you know the truth, right? And not just like the truth, like the basic truths of our church, right? Like Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Jesus Christ is fully present in the Eucharist. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like the little intricacies. That's a word, right?
Yeah.
Nailed it.
I don't know if you're using it correctly, but
these little nuances within our faith, right? But also objective truths in there. But you're right that like talking about walking that fine line of making sure that we don't want to avoid speaking about the truth, but we need to be sensitive to the people in the room because we want to make sure that they stay in. And again, so Sean, you were the president of the Newman Club at another university. Way back in the day, like 3 years ago. No, longer than that.
It's like 10 years ago now.
So like, I guess my question to put you on the spot right now, like what would your advice to Mike be right now in regards to that of making sure you're speaking truth, not shying away from truth, but also knowing, hey, listen, I don't want two people in the room during these meetings next year.
Yeah.
He got nothing. He's got nothing, man.
He
had two people in the room by the time he left.
I had a couple really, I think, powerful experiences that were not exactly with Newman Club members. One of them was like during a Wednesday night weekday mass where we were right next, the fake chapel that we had was right next to like where all the Greek life would hang out. And they had a big pizza event going on there for recruitment or something like that. And they were being loud and obnoxious while we were all like praying in candlelight, trying to focus. And at one point, like after mass, I just like found myself right after I received communion, I just walked out there and like shouted. And I knew like all these Greek life people because a lot of them were my friends. And I just kind of shouted. I was like, hey guys, like we have mass here every single Wednesday night. And if you would like to join, you're always more than welcome. But like, if you are congregating here, just please be respectful of our space. And it actually, like everyone clapped, which was cool, I guess. But afterwards, like the next day I saw some people in classes and they were all like, hey, that was like, well, first of all, we're sorry. But second of all, like that was really kind of cool that you said something like that. And it like, nobody started coming to church or anything as a result of it, but like it did trigger some good conversations around it. I only tell that story because walking out, that was my junior year year. It might have been my senior year. I think it was the end of my junior year. But I would really kind of like just use that as an example of like, don't be afraid to stand up on campus for like the church and for your own deservedness of being able to pray in the way that like you're supposed to as a Catholic. People might laugh at it and everything, but it is 100% worth it to stand up for that. And you'll never know like what hearts might be affected as a result of it. Now, as far as the people in the club, I think it's the college Newman clubs and campus ministries are such a crapshoot as far as who's going to show up, but just be open about your faith on campus. Just be a normal social person who's not afraid to talk about going to church on Sunday and talk about how like Christ is important in your life. And again, like I think you may end up opening up some hearts and minds and maybe bringing them around to the club too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I definitely use a lot of those or things like that have happened to me. Not exactly the same thing, but our biggest day of like recruitment, I guess you could say, is Ash Wednesday. Because everybody that's, Catholic always come for their ashes on Ash Wednesday.
You put up air quotes for those who
Yes.
aren't watching.
I did. I put up
Everyone
air
likes
quotes.
the props.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ashes on
Everybody-
Ash Wednesday and palms on Palm Sunday.
Everybody loves to get the ashes, but like you said, I have a bunch of friends in all my classes, and when I meet them, it's not, "Hey, I'm Mike, and I'm the president of the Newman Club." That's not the first thing I say.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not wearing a Bloody Jesus t-shirt all over campus, right? Yeah.
But also, these people see me at the masses, or they see me at Ash Wednesday, and me being the president, I get up there and I give a hey, welcome and all that, and people approach me afterwards saying, "Oh, like I had no idea." And I mean, I'm not shy about it. I don't go wearing it on my sleeve. Maybe I should be a little bit more open with that, but
Fine line, man.
yeah, it's a
a
fine line.
Totally fine line.
I don't want to be seen as one of those crazy people, just going around just yelling at everybody.
Yeah.
Like you said, I don't want to turn people away, but
Right. Exactly. It's living out your faith day to day as you normally would and seeing who gets attracted to that. But good for you, man. And I know I'll speak for Sean. It is super, super helpful. And we're very happy to have you on board. And the fact that you're, in college, you got a million things going on. You got a club to run and you're taking the time to be here for the listeners. They appreciate it too. So Korats, thank you. And we're going to have you on for one episode to do your official parishioner profile, my man.
sounds great. I'm excited. Glad to be here.
My man Korats right there. So that's what we got. Covered a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to another personal profile. It's been a little while.
Totally. Absolutely. So everybody speak the truth, not your truth. It's not yours. It's the truth.
Yes.
Yeah. And speaking of the truth, we've got a couple websites. JustAParishioner.com.
It is true that justaparishioner.com does exist.
I was trying to find the transition and I got stuck there. But yeah, Instagram at JustAParishioner, Facebook.com/JustAParishioner. I said it before, please rate, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And that's what we got. And that is the truth, Sean.
Yeah, and one line that I had in my head that I didn't get a chance to say because I couldn't find a natural way to fit it in, so I'm just going to say it now.
Okay.
I love the line from G.K. Chesterton. I feel like a quote guy today, but I love the line from G.K. Chesterton. He says, a mind is very much like a mouth where it's not supposed to be left open all the time. You're supposed to close it once in a while on something solid. So, like, when you have the truth, don't let your mind stay open to some other stuff that comes in then. Just, like, clench down and ride that out at that point.
Like it.
So
Good way to end there, man.
yeah. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. Definitely please continue praying for us and we'll continue praying for you.
God bless.